Hi, welcome back to the final chapter of Blender Introduction series. And today we are going to talk about how to animate stuff. Okay, so far we have been dealing with only the still images, and now that we have our own 3D model ready of this aircraft which we created in the previous chapter, I think it's time we talk about animation, what goes into animation, what is the keyframing, graph editor, and basically setting up the render output, and what are the parameters needs to be adjusted, and what all those parameters mean when you are rendering stuff. Okay, so this is where we left off in the previous chapter. We created a very basic cartoony looking aircraft model and assigned a few materials on it. So we were using EV in the previous chapter, but now for this one we are going to use cycles, because most of the time for the production you will be using cycles if you want to achieve realistic results. Okay, so this is what we are going to make today. Okay, it's going to be a very simple scene, like nothing complicated, and I didn't want to introduce too many complex animations at this moment, because it could be very difficult for the beginners, but this will be enough so that you understand what is the keyframing, and how you can basically move an object. Okay, and you will be able to understand what the graph editor is, and if you are already good with the principles of animation, I think this will be even more interesting for you. Okay, all right, so without any further ado, let's get started. Okay, and so first thing we are going to do is we are going to prepare this model for animation. Okay, so right now we have this model, but it's not clean. I mean, there are several modifiers applied to it, and the scale is not right, and pivot point are not adjusted according to the animation. So that's what we are going to do first. Okay, so let's select the wings first, and let's see what is happening. So we have subdivision modifier and mirror modifier on it. Okay, so what we can do is move the mirror modifier up, and click apply. Okay, for the viewport, change the subdivision settings to 1, and actually you can make it 0. For render, leave it to 2. So basically what will happen is, in the viewport, if you are using like a laptop or something, it could be difficult. The file could get heavy sometimes, so you can use these parameters, like you can optimize the viewport performance with this. Okay, you can make it 0, but in the render this will render just 2 subdivisions. Okay, select this object, the main body, apply the mirror modifier. Let's isolate this one and see what is happening. So I'll apply the mirror modifier, make sure the merge vertices is enabled, and apply. Okay, now go to the edit mode and just cross check if all the vertices are merged properly. Okay, so this looks good, and I'll leave it as it is. I can disable the lights and camera in the viewport. Okay, so that we can concentrate only on the model. Okay, same thing I'll do for these objects one by one. Subdivision in the viewport, make it 0. All right, and leave 2 subdivisions for the render. Okay, viewport 0, or you can leave 1 for the viewport. So the basically what we are doing is we are cleaning up the model. Sometimes you have a lot of modifiers which are stacked over here, which you used to model the stuff. So before you go into animation, you might want to merge those modifiers, like mirror and weld vertices, etc. Okay, but if those are deformers, like bending objects and something which you want to animate later, those you don't need to merge. Okay, move the mirror modifier up and apply this one. I think I hope you understand what we are trying to do here. Basically whatever is unnecessary, we are going to remove that. We don't need so much of viewport resolution, so you can either make it 0, 1 to increase the viewport performance. even though we are dealing with just one model right now, we are going to practice this so that when you're making something really complex, you have the habit of cleaning up the model. Okay, so yeah, I think all the modifiers are collapsed, and we don't have any mirror or other modifiers right now. But what we can do is now select everything and just scale it right. Okay, right now uh, the scale is 1 meter, okay, 1.5 meter. When you are dealing with the animation, you just want to make sure first the scale of everything is right. Okay, otherwise when you are creating layouts or dealing with simulation or dealing with the camera parameters, which are very dependent on the scale parameter, those things could be become very difficult to deal with if the scale is not right. Let's say if you are dealing with a macro photography shot and the scale is really big, then your camera parameters won't work as well as so I'll select everything B and just scale this one to something like, let's just make sure everything is selected. Yeah, I'll make it around uh, even though this is a very cartoony plane, but I'll keep it 30 meters. Okay, around 30 meters, something like this. Okay, 30 meters in the y direction. Yeah, so now each of these objects we need to parent, okay, before we start animating. But before parenting, we need to set the origins for each of these objects. Okay, now just make sure origins are working properly. I'll isolate this one, the front part. Right now it's not in the center, so what we can do is object set origin to geometry, so that this is in the center. And same for this one, object set origin to geometry. Yeah, now we can align this one to this one. Align objects X and Z, press enter. Yeah, object set origin to geometry. Now this is in the center as well. Now about the origin, why we are doing this is before you do that, you need to think about what you are going to animate and what not. Even though it's a good practice to keep origin in the center for or where it is needed in hierarchy, like we discussed, the door origin needs to be in the side so that it works like a hinge. And for this object to rotate from the center, it needs to be in the center. And so yeah, so for these objects it's crucial because we will be rotating these objects and animating, so it should be in the center. But for stuff like these screws and all, at this moment it's not necessary, but you can do that if you want. Also the wings are right now one object because we applied the mirror modifier. You can separate them by loose parts. Now these are two wings. Okay, so now the wings are two separate objects, and these as well. Now this model is not designed in the way that the wing should be animating because there is no proper mechanism over here. But even then, it's a good practice that when you're cleaning up your model, you place your origins where it needs to be. So let's say these two wings right now, the x-axis for these objects are sideways, so I'll enable the origins in the move tool and go to the local. Okay, and we are going to align the x-axis, sorry, the z-axis should be upwards, and x should be aligned to this one. Okay, something like this. Let's go to the top view, place it over here, right over here. Okay, so now the x is in this direction, z is upwards, and y is over here. Okay, Same for this one. Now because this is a mirror object, the x for the x side for this object should be in this direction. Okay, so let's move the z direction upwards and align the x direction sideways parallel to the wings. Yeah, this looks fine. So disable the origin. Now you'll see, let's say if there was a need of animating the wings, if you go to the individual origins, you will be able to animate about these screws over here. We used array modifier and a curve modifier, so you can apply them in the order. And always remember, when you're applying modifiers, the topmost should be applied first. Okay, apply array modifier and then curve modifier, and you can shade them smooth if you want. All right, so yeah, now let's talk about the parenting. Yeah, so the parenting, as the name suggests, is a basically control object. Okay, so let's say if I just make a new file, all right, and make a sphere over, yeah, in the center, and now let's make a cube. Okay, and I'll scale it down, move it up, scale it in the z direction like this. Now if I select this object and then shift right click on this object, now this one is the active object. Okay, now what I can do is I can press Ctrl P. Now this will ask you set parent to. Okay, and you can click on object. Okay, now what this does is, when you any transformation you make on this object will also, this object will follow as well. Okay, if you select this object, you can move it anywhere if you like, and as you can see, there is a connection line in between these two objects. Okay, now this represents that this object is connected to this one. This one is the parent and this one is the child. Okay, and very easy terms over here. I think it's a self-explanatory, and whenever you are rigging any complex stuff, this will be stuff you will be dealing with, and the entire rig is designed in a certain hierarchy. So when you're dealing with a human rig, the arms will be parented to the torso, and the legs will be parented to the pelvis, and the feet will be parented to the lower legs. The head will be parented to the neck, and neck to the upper body, something like that. But obviously there will be a much more complex system. So this is what the parenting means. Okay, so let's say if we want to animate these wings. Okay, now what are all the components? If I now this one, these three should be connected to this one. Okay, yeah, so what you can do is you can simply select this one, and this should be linked to this one. Okay, you can select this object, press Ctrl P, click on object. Okay, now if you rotate this one now in the z direction, this will also affect the child object. Okay, now similarly you can select these three objects, the wings, and activate this one over here, and press Ctrl P again and set parent to object. Okay, now if you rotate this one, you can see the propeller part is working perfectly. Okay, now this is much more easier and convenient. And now these objects, if you like, you can merge them together, or what we can do is we can basically select all of these, select everything but leave the front part. Okay, and now we can shift right click on the main body, because we want the main body to control all of these. Okay, press Ctrl P and set parent to object. Now if you just move this one, everything else will also move with this. Okay, and now you can select this part and select the main body and parent this as well. Now since these objects are already parented to this one, those are also moving. So this object is the child of this one, this object is child of this one. Okay, Now if you were dealing with much more complex object, like if you wanted to animate these as well, then you can all break the hierarchy even more, like you can parent this one to this one and this one to this one. Like you need to see, I mean, what your model is and how it functions. Okay, so it's totally up to you. And yeah, yeah, now you can select this main body and press Alt G to place it in the center. Okay, change this to, okay, now select everything. Now we can apply, sorry, Control A, all transform. Okay, so that this is the default scale and default position and everything. Okay, now select the main body and press Shift S. We want to set the cursor to selected so that the cursor is in the center of this object. That's because we are going to bring one empty object in the center. Let's make empty object cube. Okay, now let's make the scale 15 and we can align these two, align objects X, Y and Z. Okay, now these empty objects are just to help you arrange your stuff. Like these are used for rigging, and these doesn't have any render properties. You can't render these out. It's not a good idea to set the key on the model. Okay, you would want to use a control object for the keying. Okay, this is always a good practice, just so that if there are any changes in the model or any changes in the rig or something, you will always have the keys unaffected of these control objects, which are unaffected. Okay, so you can select the main body and the empty object and press Ctrl P, parent to object, and we can rename this one to controller. Now if you like, you can make one more empty object. What we can do is Shift S, cursor to selected, and make one empty object over here, circle, make it 10 and align this to, sorry, yeah, right in the center. We are going to move it out a bit. Yeah, so we'll use this one to animate our these parts. Now let's select this one and select this one, press Ctrl P, object. Yeah, so this is working, and now I can select these wing controllers and select the main controller, press Ctrl P, object. Yeah, so we are not going to complicate this further, because it's a very basic beginner series, and I don't want to get into the rigging part at this moment, but I hope you understand the meaning of the parenting and how this works. Yeah, so I think we are now all set and we can start animating this one. So let's talk about the animation. The animation is in 3D or 2D or any other medium. The principles are pretty much same. Okay, so think of the photograph. When you capture a photograph, that is one frame and that is captured, the one moment is captured. Okay, but in the video, just like in the video, you have 30 frames per second. So basically what happens is, when one moment is captured into multiple frames and those multiple frames are played at rapid succession, such as 30 frames per second or 24 frames per second, or these days actually we have 60 and 200 frames per second. So when it's displayed in rapid succession, that is where the human eye perceives it as if it's moving. Okay, so to clear this out, I'll just make a new file and make a UV sphere over here. Okay, let's go to the front view. So as you can see over here, we have a timeline. Okay, and since we are working on 24 frames, you can make it 30 if you want. So the time in the animation is divided into frames. Okay, so just like in real world, at a certain time, let's say if at 0 second I was at the door, okay, and at the 10 second I was in the kitchen. Okay, so from 0 to 10 in the animation, that sequence will be captured into frames. Okay, not just the animation but in the video as well. So In the video we capture those frames, but in the animation we manually make those frames with whatever content we have in the viewport. So right now let's just make this ball and move it on the ground. Now I want this ball to bounce, okay, and I want this ball to move up and down, okay. So let's make this one is a timeline, and when you play this timeline, whatever animation is in the viewport, that will play, okay, whatever the motion is recorded. And how do you record that motion? That is what we are going to discuss. Okay, so over here, as you can see, there is a thing called Autokey. You enable this. Now what this will do is this will Autokey. This will basically record all the motion, whatever changes are happening over time in different frames, okay. So at frame 0, if I move this, you can see there's a yellow dot over here. That means the position of this object is recorded at frame 0. Now let's go to the frame number 15. Okay, I'll make this timeline a little shorter. I'll make it 30 frames so that we can create a small loop. And let me just enable the screencast again. Yeah, so with the control middle click you can stretch this timeline if you want. That is not important right now, so don't worry about it. So at the frame 0 we have this frame already, so I'll move to the frame 15 and move this up. Okay, and you can see I have 2 frames now. Now let's go to the frame 30 again, and you can move it back again. Or what you can do is you can simply, if you want to bring it to the same position as where it was before, you can simply right click on or left click on this frame, press Ctrl C and go over here, press Ctrl V, so that we have same frame. Okay, now disable the auto key and let's play the animation. Okay, so the ball is moving. Okay, I won't say it's bouncing because it doesn't have a very realistic motion, but that we will get to that in a moment. Okay, this is auto key. Okay, now what will happen is, let's say when the auto key is enabled, okay, whatever changes I do, that will be recorded. Okay, now for a simple setup like this it will work, but a good practice is to not set the auto key on but manually set the key. Okay, now I'll just press B and select all these frames and delete them, delete keyframes, press Alt G to set the position, reset the position. Now how do you manually keyframe an object? Let's say at frame 1 I want to set a key, okay, and I want to set the key for only the position. I'll press I on the keyboard and this will give me insert keyframe menu. Okay, now click on location and go to the frame 15 and move it up. Press I again, click on the location, and just like before I can copy this frame and paste it over here, or you can also press Shift D and place it over here. Alright, so we have same animation but we manually place the keys. Okay, now why do you manually place the keys? Because like sometimes, let's say if you forget to disable this one, or during the auto key you happen to adjust any other stuff, any other thing which can be animated, now it could become very difficult to clean up your scene, and it will basically generate a lot of frames. Okay, and this way by eye actually it gives you a lot of control, like what do you want to set key for. Like right now over here, if you see, this is called summary of animation in the timeline. Now this object's X, Y and Z location is recorded in the timeline. Okay, so that is what it's showing you keys for. Okay, now the changes are happening only in the Z. Okay, if you click on the X, you can see this line over here. This means there are no changes happening and it's the same key continuing from here to here to here. In the Y, it's the same key continuing from here to here to here, because this yellow bar represents that there is no change. But in the Z there are changes, that is why there is no connected line over here. Okay, so we are going to add few more exciting things over here. Now let's go to the frame 0 and Right now it's a very linear motion. Okay, now if you go over here, just like any other editor, we have the animation category. If you go over here, you can see it over here as well. Now right now we are in the timeline. Okay, but if you want to let's just play the animation first. So this one is a very linear motion. Okay, it's like a piston moving up and down. It's a very robotic animation. Okay, and you can not just place the keyframes but also adjust the time interpolation. Okay, I want this ball to work as if the real ball. I mean, it should, when it bounces, it should be fast, and when it reaches the highest maximum point where it can no longer escape the gravity, there it should slow down. Okay, so we want this ball to be really fast till here, and then it should slow down in the center, in the middle of the animation, and then come back like real fast. Okay, that is how the real ball bounces basically. So if you change this to graph editor, or you can simply press Ctrl tab to change the timeline to graph editor, you can see the summary again, but this time these are not keys but the graphs. Okay, if you are coming from After Effects, you must have seen graphs over there as well. So again, in the X direction we don't have any graph, in the Y direction we don't have any graph. I mean, the graph is there but the changes are not visible because there are no changes. So in the Z direction you can see the changes. Okay, now you can manipulate this graph. Okay, now as we discussed, we want this ball to go really fast, like go up really fast, and during the hang time it should slow down. Okay, so what I can do is, instead of this ease in, I can make this change to happen fast. Okay, so try to read this graph as a change. Okay, so this graph represents change, and over here I want the changes to happen fast in the Z direction. So if it was like this, that means the change is slowly dragging up and like slowly building up, and then it happens fast and then again slows down over here. And if I play that, it will not look like a bounce. Okay, the ball, when it hits the ground, it immediately deflects, and it happens very fast, and the ball bounces like I mean after the contact to the ground, the push is really strong, and when it reaches the maximum height, there it slows down. You can either scale this point, or you can move these handles inside out in the X direction. Okay, and again you can make this point or this handle, I mean this there should be more acceleration over here. Okay, so now see what happens. Now this looks like a ball bounce. Okay, I'll just place one simple ground plane over here. Alright, so if you want, you can exaggerate this motion a lot. You can stretch it and make it like this. Okay, so the motion is there, but okay, I will not get into the principles of animation at this moment, but I'll just add one exciting thing over here. Okay, so just like how we have added one key for the location, if I press I can set the key for scale, rotate, and other properties as well. So I'll go to the frame 0. Now if you see in the real world, or if you're coming from 2D background, I'm sure you know what the stretch and squash means. Those are first two principles of animation. Okay, now just to clear the idea, I'll draw one sketch over here. Okay, when the ball hits the ground, it will be squashed, and after that, when it catches the speed, it will be stretched, and as it moves up, it will take its original shape. During the hang time, it will be perfectly circular, and as it falls down, it will start stretching again slowly, just before the ground hit, it will be really stretched if it's a really like rubbery ball, and then during the contact it will be squashed like this. It's not a best sketch, but I hope you understand. Okay, I'll just delete this sketch. Go to the view and annotation, delete. Okay, so now we'll try to do the same thing with the scale parameter. Let's go to the frame 0 and scale this in Z direction like this, and scale it up. Move this down, press I, and since we moved this one as well, I'll press location and scaling. Okay, go to the frame 15, Alt S to reset the scale and scaling, and for Z scale I can copy this key and place it over here as well. Okay, actually Z location as well. All of these keys we can copy and paste it over here. Alright, for some reason, yeah, let's just do Shift D. Okay, so we have stretch and squash, but it's not happening at the right time. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll break the animation down further. Okay, what we want is at the frame 0 it's squashed, but just like how I explained in the sketch, at the frame 2, just after it hits the ground and it catches the speed, when it lifts back up it should be stretched. So I'll press Alt S to reset the scale and scale it in the vertical direction. Scaling, key for scaling, and when it's about to reach the just in the middle of the animation, before it reaches the center hang time, you can make it almost perfect. Okay, now after the hang time, when it's about to fall down, you can make it vertically stretched very slightly, scale, and just before it's about to hit the ground, you can move it up and scale it like this. You can also click on available. This will set a keyframe for whatever animation parameters we have over here. Now let's disable the overlays. Okay, I'll just reduce the stretch, scaling. Yeah, so we have a like a slight stretch and squash in animation. Okay, now these are the things software will not help you with. I mean, you will have to manually observe motion around yourself. Like you need to study the motion of like each of the objects you see. Now this is if you want to really master the animation, and this is if you want to take the animation forward. Okay, but just to clear the fundamentals, this is how you set the key for different channels, and this is and it's not just for the parameters of an object. You can also animate any other parameter you see, most of the parameters you see on the screen for any object. Okay, you can also animate the materials, the environment, and the colors of object. You can animate the modifiers. Okay, now let's give this one some material and make this one black. I'll go to the look dev mode and disable the scene world. Let's enable the screen space reflection in the render properties, and to this ball I'll give one interesting color. like this. Okay, now what we are going to do is we'll just like I mentioned, we can also animate any other parameters. Okay, so instead of let me just save this file, and for the scale parameter I'll delete all the keys. Okay, double click on the Z scale, delete, Y scale, delete, X scale, delete. Now we are back to the basic animation. Okay, I just want to explain one more thing, and that is how to set key for other parameters. Now let's apply one simple deform on our ball object. Okay, sorry, simple deform, and I'll change this to stretch. Okay, now let's go to the frame 0, and this is already stretched, and yeah, so this is a other way of adding stretch and squash to your ball bouncing animation. So instead of pressing I over here, now this will this will not work with the modifiers. Okay, now if you want to set a key on any other parameter which are not the transforms of one object, you'll have to go to that parameter and press I. Now this turns yellow, and over here you can see there's a simple deform. Okay, and let's go to the frame 1. You can stretch it like this, press I, press I over here, make it 0, almost 0. I go back to the 15 frame, 0, press I to set the key. When it's about to fall down, stretch it again slightly till over here. You can make it really stretched, and again you can copy paste the same key. So yeah, this looks like a very stylized ping pong kind of animation. Okay, and similarly, if you go to the material properties, you can animate color, metallicness, or any other parameter you see, or on the modifier, literally like any parameters you can animate. Okay, which are on the object level. Okay, I don't think you'll be able to animate these parameters because this property cannot be animated, because this is a viewport property, this is not a scene property. Okay, so I'll change this one to, I'll key it as it is, and when it's in the air I'll change this to purple and come back again. You can copy paste these shader nodes key, shift D, yeah, sorry. So as you can see, it's changing color over time. You can also add textures and animate textures, like let me just add one last thing over here. If you go to the shader editor, and yeah, okay, for the textures you can do, let's say if I had one texture, Musgrave texture, in the base color. Okay, now these parameters I can animate as well. Okay, you can set key for I over here and scale it, set a key, come back again, set one key, and you can see this texture is animating now. Okay, similarly you can go to the, I just disable this one, you can go to the world property and bring one texture, environment texture, and let's just open some HDR, enable the HDR in the scene world. I'll make it isometric view so that we can't see the HDR. Press Ctrl T so that we have coordinates. Now you can rotate one HDR and create a day-night cycle. Okay, and not just rotate this one, if just like previous chapters, if you bring one shader, mix shader, you can combine two different HDRs, and let's open bright daylight over here. So, oh sorry, instead of mix shader I should have done mix texture, color mix RGB. Yeah, my bad. And make it 2. So in first one I have one night HDR, and in second one I have one brightly lit city HDR. So let's say at frame 0 I want this to be night, and I press I on the factor of the mix RGB and go over here, make it daylight, make it night light. Okay, so like this you can animate any parameters. Okay, all right, so there are a lot of things you can animate, and that is what we are going to discuss. We are going to make clouds and add motion to the clouds with a texture, and we are going to animate camera, like a zoom in and out, also add motion to the airplane. So if you like to study animation further, I suggest you study principles of animation first, and also even if you don't want to get into animation, what's more important about animation than these keyframes or graphs is the motion of animation. And once you get the sense of motion, like just have a look around and try to understand what is driving that motion. If you have a look at the fan, it's a linear motion, and if you have a look at the bouncing ball, and you try to understand when you walk how your arm swings. Okay, a lot of things there are, and once you understand the motion better, then you would know where to set the key. Okay, just like for this, because I already know animation a bit, I knew just before when the ball hits the ground, it should squash, and it should accelerate when it after deflecting the surface, and when it's in the air it should slow down as the gravity is trying to slow it down. So yeah, let's scale it up, and since we don't have any scale keys right now, we should be able to scale it up however you want. Okay, all right, so basically you can animate any parameter for one object's physical properties, material properties, and modifier properties, or like anything related to one object. Okay, and also so this is the timeline, and this is the graph editor. Okay, let me just enable the screencast again. So control tab for the timeline, control tab for graph editor, and you can click on normalize to see your graphs aligned together properly. Okay, and if you press home, it will maximize the graph in the view, and with the numpad 0 dot key you can focus on one graph. Okay, all right, so if you go over here in the editors, there is a category called animation. So this first one we discussed was timeline, which basically gives you representation of the keys which are recorded in the timeline. Second one, which is this one, is the graph editor. Okay, now there are a few others called dope sheet and drivers and non-linear animation. We are not going to get into dope sheet or non-linear animation at this moment. It's a little bit advanced topic to talk at this moment. Basically what non-linear animation is, like just like this one, when you have multiple animations of one object, you can combine those in a way, basically how you work with the compositing basically. So you have multiple layers of animation and you combine them with the non-linear animation. Yeah, there are drivers. So these are topics we'll discuss maybe in some other chapter. These are very bit advanced for beginners to understand or discuss, introduce at this moment. But there's one thing I want to explain, which is over here. If you press N, just like this property panel in the right, you can bring this property panel in the graph editor. Let's select your object, bouncing ball object. Okay, now if you go over here, you can see the modifiers. Okay, now there are few modifiers which are very useful. Okay, now let's see the cycles. If you click on the cycles, what this does is basically it creates a loop of animation. Okay, now right now we are dealing with only 30 frames. Like our animation is only 30 frame, but what if you wanted this animation to continue for 10 seconds? Okay, so you can increase your timeline and use this parameter cycle. Okay, and there are few things you can adjust over here, like the influence and all, but we won't discuss this at this moment. And there is one very useful which I like a lot. It's called step interpolation. Okay, now if you have seen the stop motion, you would see once I play this one. Sorry, I think I need to apply this one in the Z location. Yeah, stepped interpolation. So as you can see, it's trying to instead of one smooth animation, it looks like a clay animation. Okay, like you have these steps in motion. Okay, and you can increase and decrease these animations, so it looks a little more like a glitchy. Okay, so if you are like dealing with the stop motion or something, I mean you want to give it a stop motion effect, you can use this parameter. It's a very interesting one. I'll just disable the scene light. It's a bit distracting. Okay, so step interpolation is an interesting one, and there's one other called noise. Now what this does is basically adds noise to your graph. Instead of making it smooth, it adds a random noise, and you can play with these settings. Like as you can see, there's some random noise, and you can scale this noise up and down, stretch the duration of noise. So like when you're dealing with organic stuff, you might would want to throw in a bit noise. Let's say if you are making a airplane animation and you want some of the body parts to shake. Okay, and you can use this parameter to add a shake to the motion of one object. And similarly, we have a generator, and this one is like it basically generates a value. Let's say if you want to animate one fan and you want it to just keep rotating, so for that you wouldn't want to set keys and try to manually rotate one fan. You can simply click on generator, and we will use this in the final animation, so we'll get to this in a moment. So alright, so these are the few interesting things you can play around with. And so timeline, graph editor, and also just like how we created pipes for the aircraft model. So when you create one curve object, it gives you these handles. Okay, so these are handles, and when you create new points, the new point will automatically adjust the curve and make it a smooth connection. Okay, now sometimes you want like a very sharp point, so what you can do is you can press V and click on the vector, V and vector. This option is also available over here, control set handle type vector. Okay, now why I'm explaining this one is because the graph editor is pretty much similar to curves when you want to change the vector type. I'll go to the Z position. Now let's say if I want the Z let's say if I want to change this graph, sorry, yeah, I'll disable the normalize. So if you select this point and you want to make it sharp, you can press V and click on the vector. You can see it's back at sharp. You can basically select the entire animation and make it linear with the vector, so it's back to being linear again. Okay, so this is one good thing about the Blender. Basically whatever shortcuts and however you work in the 3D viewport, you can navigate in any other editors in a very similar way. Like if you are dealing with the UV coordinates, you can just move, rotate, scale, and adjust the view in a very similar way. Now over here I can control middle click to zoom in and zoom out over here, or on the timeline, and I can control middle click to zoom in and zoom out. I can select these things with the B and drag. I can press C and circle select. So everything is it works the same way. So this is a very good thing about Blender, which I like a lot. Okay, so let's move on to the main thing, and that is going to be we are going to start animating our aircraft model. Okay, so you have your aircraft model prepared, and I think it's a good time we start applying these practices on the actual animation, and it's going to be really exciting after you start seeing the final output. Alright, so let's get back to our main file, what we have set up already. So we have our airplane, and everything is linked and scaled right. So let's see what is happening in the front view, side view. Side view, actually this should be other way around. We want this to fly from the left to right. So press R, Z, 180 and press enter. The first thing we are going to do is set up the camera. So press 0 and see what is happening. Now since we scaled the airplane to bigger scale, nothing is fitting our camera. So to fix that, let's go to the view and simply press lock camera to view. Okay, and zoom out. Something like this. Let's disable the scene void, and there's too much shining over here. Let's disable the bloom. We want something like this. Now I'll just select the camera. Sorry, first I'll have to enable the camera and light in the object type visibility, which we had disabled previously. Select the camera and change the focal length to 60, so that the view is when you're looking at something really big, the view is kind of distorted. And yeah, this looks big now, and I'll just change the HDRI, something like this. Okay, so this is just for viewport, the HDRI, don't worry about it. Okay, so I'll keep it something like this for now, and click on the lock camera to view. Okay, now we have the camera fixed over here. Now just for the reference, we are going to create one very basic layout, and what the layout is basically for the reference that from where to where the animation needs to be. So I'll create one plane over here and go to the top view. In the item over here, let's see the scale. So we want the Y scale to be around 1700 meters because we want the airplane to fly like really fast. So it should fly from here to here because it's going to be 10 seconds animation. Okay, so and also what we can do is go to the side view, create one UV icosphere over here and scale it up. Go to the edit mode, press Shift D and duplicate everything. Shift D and make something which looks like cloud. Okay, press L to select this and make it something like organic shape. Don't worry about the shape, this is just for the motion reference and you won't have to render this later. We are going to create some other good looking clouds. Okay, so yeah, we have our clouds, and let's apply one array modifier and make it around 50 copies. Okay, yeah, so when you're dealing with large scale layout, sometimes your viewport may clip off the stuff. So to fix that, you'll have to go to the view and just change the clipping values over here in the view. Okay, now you can see everything. So we would need 55 copies. All right, now let's go to the view and see what is happening. Okay, we have a basic looking clouds just for the reference of animation. We can make one more duplicate. Sorry, I'll make this one 70 copies. Now there is no strict number which you need to follow. It's all going to be like you'll have to make some judgment over here and take a creative call how big the layout you want to be. You want the plane to fly really fast, If you want the plane to go at like supersonic speed, you can make it like a really long layout, and that is totally up to you. Okay, and I'll make the duplicate of these clouds and place one layer in the background. Okay, all right, so let's select all these layout objects, these two clouds and the ground plane, and press M. Now M is for the collections, and when you press M, it says move to collection. You can simply select the collection which you want, which we have over here, or you can make a new one and call it layout. Now let's hide this one and go back to our camera view. The first thing we are going to do is animate these propeller or whatever you call it. So I'll go to there are two ways you can animate this. Okay, so we'll have to rotate this one in the Y direction. One is you manually set the key for the rotation. Simply press I and rotation, and go to the last frame, and in the Y rotation set the value to something really high and press I and rotation. Now this will rotate your this propeller part. Okay, but maybe you would need something like 15,000, and press I again, and this rotates. Okay, it looks good. Now because we don't have motion blur over here, it looks stupid, but it's rotating at a really high speed. Okay, now this is one way, and other way is if you can let's delete these keys, delete keyframes. What we discussed in earlier, simply select this one and set one key over here, press I and rotation. Now press Ctrl tab to go to the graph editor, and on the Y rotation enable one modifier over here and click on generator. Now you'll see it's generating one value and continuously it's spinning the propeller. Okay, so but you can play with these values, and you'll see this graph over here. You can make it like a 0.5, 0.01 would be something really slow, but as you can see the graph, this is just for your reference, it adds a continuous growth to the graph. Okay, so we want this to be 1. Okay, let's keep it 1. All right, so you have your first animation. This is one of the way. Now let's go back to the timeline, Control tab. Now the second thing we are going to do is select the main body and go to the frame 1. Okay, we want this to be 10 seconds animation, and the animation, if you go over here to the output properties, you can see the frame rate is 24 fps. So this is a pretty good frame rate for animation, standard it is. And if you multiply 24 with 10, it's going to be 10 seconds is 240. So I'll set the range to 240 frames. All right, and I'll just save my file. Okay, now let's set the key for the location. I'll make one more view over here so that we can see what is happening in the other view, and change this to enable layout, and this one to camera view. Okay, okay, so for over here on the frame 1, I'll press I and set the location key. Go to the last frame, 240, and let's move this all the way till the end, and set the key for location. Now our plane is moving. Okay, if you see over here, it's flying. It's a very basic animation which we'll fix very soon. Now the thing is, it's moving out of the camera because camera is not following it. So we can do one simple thing, but before that, let's make sure when we go to the graph editor, press Ctrl tab we want this plane to fly at constant speed, equal speed. So we don't want it to slow down at the end of the range, or slowly ease in at the start of the animation. So we want this graph to be linear. Now for that, you can select the Y location, press V and set it to vector. All right, so that it's flying at a linear speed. Now let's select our camera. We have our camera over here. Either you can right click over here and let's scale it up. It's just a visual representation, it's not going to change your view. Okay, so frame 1, control tab to the timeline. I'll set the key for location on the frame 1, sorry, global. Make this global view and move this, go to the last frame and move this all the way till you see your plane and the frame where it looks something like the first frame. So yeah, this looks like a first frame, and set a location key. Now over here you can see our layout is kind of falling short, so we can increase the number of copies to 75. Yeah, this is fine. Now select the camera and let's go back to the graph editor again and select the Y location, press V and make it vector again, so that the camera and the plane have same motion. Alright, so it looks like it's flying really fast, and right now these clouds look very repetitive, and that is okay. This is just for visual reference, so that you have the idea of the speed. Don't worry about it too much. Disable the layout. Now we are going to add some secondary animation. So we have the plane moving in the Y direction, but it doesn't look much interesting. So let's go to the frame number 100 over here and rotate this one over here, tilt it towards the left. Okay, and yeah, first we need to set a key for undo. First we need to set a rotation key on the frame 1. I rotation, go to the frame number 100, make it like this, set the rotation. Now let's see how it looks. Alright, so go to the frame 180 and let's make it something like this. I rotation, and let's play the animation, shift spacebar. Now on the last frame we are going to make it reset the position, Alt R, not Alt R, maybe expand this summary and Y rotation, and copy the first key over here, shift D and place it on the last one. Alright, so if you want you can adjust these rotation keyframes, something like this, and if you're sure about the location and you don't want to accidentally change these location keys, then you can simply lock it over here, so that even by mistake if you happen to select the location keys, it won't change. Okay, so I'll just change the rotation one. So it looks like the plane is taking turn. Okay, so we have some very basic animation now, but right now the view kind of looks boring. So that is because our layout have these very dummy looking objects, and also the camera is not really interesting. Okay, camera is like flying at equal distance. Okay, so first thing we are going to do is just add some more interest to the camera. So let's disable the layout and select the camera. Let's just select the camera. So first thing, make sure you have some rotation key in the camera. at the frame 1. Okay, so I'll press I, rotation, same at the last frame, I, rotation. I already had keys for some reason, I think, but that is a good practice. Now go to the frame 80, and what we can do is enable the lock camera to view over here and select the main body, enable the overlays. Okay, now over here what we can do is zoom out. Now you can see over here whatever changes we do because of the lock camera to view, those changes are happening to the camera. Now we want when the camera takes turn, the camera should zoom out and become a slightly more frontal view. Now select the camera and do one rotation and location and rotation key. Yeah, so this looks better. And then other way around, when around 160 frame, let's select the main body, press dot on the number pad so that you zoom in on the view zooms in on the selected object. Now let's move it in the center and zoom in like over here. Okay, now you can select the camera. Okay, maybe slightly over here. Yeah, select the camera and press I, location and rotation. So as you can see, the view looks much more interesting. It's like it's not like always sticking to the subject, but also zooming in and out. So one more thing we can do is our view is always like this 3/4 view. What we can do is in the frame 1 we can make it slightly side view like this. Okay, and select the camera, press I and location and rotation, do the same thing and visually adjust it to almost similar to the first view, something like this. Select the camera, you can either select it from here or here, that is okay. Now press I on the last frame and location and rotation. Now this looks better. I'll just save the file. Okay, it's not a perfect loop and I'm not even trying to make a loop, so that is okay. The next interesting thing, okay, now disable the lock camera to view. Now let's enable the layout and see what is happening. I'll just move these clouds down, these are looking too much. Alright, and let's play the animation. What we can do is go to the look tab mode and see the animation. Press N, minimize this one. So yeah, I mean till the time we add more detail like clouds and the HDR and stuff, the layout, the speed and all, the camera looks fine. So now we can start creating some interesting clouds. Okay, these are just for the reference. Okay, so to make the clouds, what we are going to do is, so we have our plane animation flying from left to right. Okay, and we have our layout. Now we are going to create some realistic clouds. Okay, the first thing, let's change the engine from EV to cycles, and now let's render this view and see what is happening. Yeah, let's go to the shader editor and go to the world, and I'll apply one sunset.exr. Okay, and change the rotation so that we can see only the sky. Alright, this is our main environment source, and if you want the sky to be like really blue, what you can do is color and bring one hue saturation and enable the hue saturation over here, put it over here and increase the saturation of the sky slightly, not too much. and also play with the different rotations of the different angle of the HDRI, so that you have some really nice looking clouds, sky. Okay, so we have the sky, and we have one light over here, and which we created earlier. We don't need it. We can delete this one and bring one more light. It's called one sunlight. Okay, and give it some interesting angle. Let's make it something like this. Okay, strength maybe 50 or 20. Okay, give it slightly warm color like this. Okay, now to make the clouds, let's go to the object in the shader editor, and what we are going to do is we are going to create clouds with a shader. Okay, let's bring one cube in the viewport over here. Okay, and make it around, if you go to the item, make it around 30 by 30 by 30. Okay, and place it over here. We are going to make this one, go to the frame 0, sorry, for frame 1, and go to the side view and place it over here. Go to the camera view, something like this, and press M and make a new collection called clouds. Okay, now let's disable the plane so that we can only focus on the cloud. Now let's create one new shader called principal BSDF. It will bring principal BSDF by default. I'll change this to clouds. Now so far, whatever materials we have used, those were surface materials, like whatever color or whatever texture I bring in, these are always applied on the surface level, on the polygons. Okay, I can't see what is inside the object. Okay, now if you see in the material output, there are three kind of output. One is the surface, one is the volume and displacement, and so far we have only worked with the surface materials in this series. Now if we delete this one and bring one shader called volume scatter and enable this one and plug this one into volume, you'll see it creates this volume like a smoky volume thing and fills the box with it. Okay, and it's not applied only on the surface. If it doesn't matter how much you zoom in, you will not see the inside of the box because it's filled with the volume. Okay, now one more interesting thing you can do is, if you plug this one, the Voronoi texture, into the density, you'll see something interesting. Sorry, I'll just change this one device from CPU to GPU. Now let's render this one. Okay, now you can see the texture is driving the density of this object, but these volume objects could be very time taking. I mean, these take time to render, but we are going to optimize it, don't worry about it. Okay, so first thing, we are going to set it, if you have powerful GPU, you can change this to GPU, and also in the volume section, in the render properties, we are going to increase the step size so that it renders faster. Right now it's only 0.1. I'll make it 1 meter. Okay, now you can see it's rendering very fast. Okay, but if your volume object doesn't have too much of detail, you can increase this even further. Okay, so right now this is our volume object, and you can see my texture is creating a volume. Okay, now I'll bring one better example. I'll just cut this one and bring one gradient texture and plug this one into density. Okay, now if I change this to spherical and press Ctrl T, because my node wrangler is enabled, this will bring my mapping coordinates. Okay, by default this brings generated vector. That is because by generated, it means the texture is generated from one corner, from this one, and scaled up, like from here. If I scale in and out, it will generate from here. Okay, but I want this to be in the center of the object. Now you'll see the gradient texture is creating a volume. Okay, and there is one more interesting thing you can do. This I had seen in the CG Geek tutorial, and it's a very interesting approach. You can see they have a entire tutorial on just how to make clouds. So as you see over here, the Z direction is represented in the blue, and the X direction is in the red, and the Y direction in the green. Okay, now RGB and XYZ, these are vector coordinates. Okay, and actually you can use these RGB values to influence the vector inputs. Okay, like XYZ in the rotation location. Now you'll see the difference if I go to the color and bring in RGB. Okay, now the blue one is the Z with a vertical one, so I'll go to the blue one first. Let's just plug it in. Now see what happens if I increase or decrease the blue one. It affects the vertical. Okay, now if I go to the red one, and this is the X direction, see what happens when I increase or decrease the X one. The cloud move, I mean the gradient texture moves in the X direction. So this is a very good way of creating some organic distortions in the vector coordinates. So you can make something like a cloudy looking shape from here. And this is not just it. We are going to create one interesting texture just in a moment. Now I'll just reset it, RGB curves, blue, and I just want to give this one a slightly shape like this. Okay, and just like in the shading chapter, we had discussed about how you can combine multiple textures. Now this gradient texture, we can multiply this with a Voronoi texture. Now let's go to the color and click on mix RGB and bring in one mix RGB and plug the distance of Voronoi texture into this one and change this to overlay. And now you can see you have a cloudy looking shape. Okay, and if you remember in the shading lesson, we had created one wooden texture, and that was with a Voronoi, and in the vector if you plug in some noise. Let's add one texture and add some noise texture. Now before that, let's just make this one a 4D. 4D will give you this parameter where you can animate the cloud. Okay, like animate the evolution, I mean the time parameter. Okay, now let's make this one around 6. Now I'll change this overlay value all the way to 1, and the noise one I'll make it 5 and leave the rest as it is. Okay, and let's change this value, the W. What this does is it generates a random value and animates your texture. So let's create 4.4. Okay, now you have some cloudy looking shape, and let's try some other texture from here, F1, F2. So as you can see from F1, if I change this to F2, you get some different shape. Okay, so I'm going to just play with this parameter over here, also change this value, the RGB value, and make it vertically like squashed. Okay, and now let's add one converter, color ramp over here, and what this can do is this can limit upper and lower limit of your the cloud, I mean the density. So you can adjust these values, how much the you want to expand this gradient texture. Okay, now after this you'll just have to play with these parameters and find a perfect find the kind of cloud you need. So if you want a very cartoony looking cloud which doesn't have much noise, you can decrease this scale value over here. Let's just do one thing, enable the plane and place the cloud over here. Yeah, so now that our light is affecting the cloud, you can see the difference. And also one more interesting thing you can do is you can when you stretch this box in the X direction or the Y direction or the Z direction, you can actually create one like a different shape of the cloud. I mean, the texture is going to stretch with it. So as you can see over here, it's the same cloud, but the shape has changed. Now one more thing you can do is go to the shader and click on the add shader. We are going to bring in one more shader and click on the volume absorption. Okay, we want this volume to absorb one color, and that is going to be, I'll just plug in the same input in the density and add some sort of a purple color, like a very slight hint of color. Okay, I don't want this to be like a gray cloud. So your scene will kind of get heavy if you add too much of volume, and I'm not sure what kind of computer configuration you're using, but if it gets too heavy, then you can always play with these values, increase the step size and make it like around till the time it's not losing too much of quality, but also you can see the cloud. Okay, so now that I have this cloud, and start replacing these the original layout we created for the layout with these ones. Okay, now to do that, we are going to simply, let's just delete this box, and we are only going to keep this cloud, and we are going to keep the volume step size to 5. Okay, you can keep it to 10 if it's taking too long to render. And yeah, so let's go to the camera view, and let's create one other view over here for layout reference and enable the layout. Now let's add this cloud over here. Okay, disable the layout and frame it over here, something like this. Scale it down if you want, and let's make it 5 steps for now. Okay, now what you can do is you can make a duplicate of this one and place it over here, so that when the camera animates, you'll have multiple clouds if you scrub the timeline. Okay, and also you can stretch it in Y direction and move it downwards, and maybe give it some random rotation like this. Okay, now create one more duplicate of this, place it in the Y direction, and let's move ahead and see where it falls. So this is over here, and now you can move this one up, place it over here, and also give this one a random rotation. Scale it up or down, that depends on your taste. Alright, so now I'll make a copy of these three and move these in Y direction and add more copies. Okay, now let's select all of these and create more copies and just fill our layout which we created earlier with these clouds. Okay, so this is just the front layer, and also now go to the front view. Let's disable the camera, select these clouds and go to the side view. Now we are going to create one more duplicate and move them in the Y direction. Okay, now that you have your entire layer of clouds in the front row, what you can do is let's enable the screencast again. For some reason my screencast keep disappearing, so I'll make one more duplicate of the clouds over here, and this will be back row. Okay, and the scale up the entire thing. And since our view is flipped, because we are working from the left to right, these let's work in the back view. Yeah, back view, and place few clouds over here. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to arrange them more properly. what we can do is let's go through it one by one. Okay, let's go to the frame 1 and select this one, and start aligning these clouds and create as much randomness as possible. Let's go over here. Now this cloud is looking too much, so what we can do is scale it down, press 0. Now move this down. Okay, now I think these clouds look way too dense, so we are going to decrease the density of these clouds. Let's select any of these box, go to the shader editor, and let's move this value, the black one, towards the right, and also let's play with the scale parameter, or change this to linear light. Yeah, so these are just like Photoshop modes, a bit more advanced, but you'll have to choose the right combination. Right now the clouds look too dense, so that's because the light is not bouncing much in the clouds. So what we can do is enable, if you go over here in the render properties, go to the light path, in the volume, if you enable this value and make it 1, you'll see your light is interacting and creating some bounces. Okay, now also you can change this value and make it warm. So right now our view kind of looks empty, we don't have much of clouds. So what we can do is add one more layer, and let's go to the front view, the back view, and select all these clouds, duplicate them and place it somewhere over here. Okay, and let's go to the back view again, select all these back layer of the cloud and shift them up. And then you can start adjusting the clouds position and scale. So just go to the different frames and just see if you can create some variation, and yeah, so that it doesn't look repetitive. So once you have placed your clouds and created some variation, so just basically make a duplicate and fill up your scene with this. Now if you go to the solid mode, this is what it looks like. So we won't be able to do much in this view. So let's just select the cloud, select objects in the cloud, and go to the object properties, and in the viewport visibility, let's make this one to bounce, and then right click over here and copy to selected. Now all of these boxes are only visible in the bounce format. Okay, now your clouds are still there, don't worry about it. And we are going to tweak few more things. Maybe we can tweak the noise scale. Let's see what happens if I make this to 2. So this looks interesting, and let's go to the RGB curves, and let's see if we tweak these values and create some interesting shapes. Okay, I'm just going to throw in some randomness, and let's go over here and see. So this cloud is kind of too big, so that is okay. Let's move it over here, and again there is too much of cloud over here, so we can just adjust these as we see them in the view. Let's limit this with the gradient, and also you can, if you want to scale these up and down, you can do that. 0.5 will fill up the entire box. If you make it 2, it will be very small looking cloud. So let's make it 0.8. And also right now the plane looks kind of a dark. Okay, so what we can do is we can create one light over here. Let's click over here and create one light and area light. Okay, and let's disable the clouds. Okay, I'll just press M and move this to light and camera and disable the clouds. Now I'll select this light we have created and select the main controller and press Ctrl P and parent this one. Okay, now scale this light up, go to the camera view and rotate this one other way around. Now what we want is, we want this side of the plane to look brighter. It was looking very boring and not exciting, so let's add some warm color and it should look like a bounce light. Okay, so as you can see, when I move this light around, like without this it was a very dark looking bottom, and if I enable this one, it looks like a bounce light. So I'll make it 1000 and add some brightness to it. If you want, you can make one more duplicate of this and place it over here so that we have some sort of fill light somewhere over here. Okay, maybe make it 2000 and see. Alright, so we have some bounce light over here, and okay, and also if you see over here, we need to adjust this material. If you go to object and index of refraction for this glass part, make it 1.3. okay, and what we can do is we can move it out a bit. Okay, right now it's not visible much, so disable the clouds and let's move this entire object in Z direction like this. Go to edit view, select these entire edges and move them in Z direction downwards. Okay, and also what we can do is select this character, unnecessary objects, and we can move it out a bit. Okay, like this. Now if you want, you can go to the front view and create one more layer of the let's go to the back view. So whatever clouds we have in the back, let's create one more layer of it and place it really far from the camera, like so that we have some more interest in the background. So yeah, I mean, looking at your computer configuration, if the scene is getting too heavy, you wouldn't want to add so many clouds, and also you need to adjust this parameter if it gets really difficult to render. Okay, but don't increase it so much so that the cloud start to look really flat. Like if you increase it too much, the density will be these will appear really flat. Okay, so make it I'll keep it at 10 for now, and now let's start preparing this one for render and take a preview. Okay, so right now I think when I look at the clouds, the overall frames look fine, but I think we can add some more interest to the light. So let's go to the 3D view and see what all light sources we have. I'll disable the clouds for now. So we have one sunlight, and then we have a few lights which are attached to the plane. So I'll create one more light over here, duplicate this area light we created earlier, and change this to point light. Okay, let's increase the size of this light. We want some soft shadows over here. If we enable the cloud, and we definitely need some more interest in the main sunlight. Okay, so let's select the sunlight which is somewhere over here, and we are going to give it some interesting angle which looks like a sunset. Let's make it 20 and see what is happening. Increasing the intensity creates some interesting rim on the clouds, so but this might be too much, so I'll make it 10. Alright, and let's go to the, so after this the process is going to be a back and forth. Basically what we are trying to do is we are trying to achieve a good visual, so this process can take time. All you need to do is find the perfect balance of lighting and the layout and the look of everything. So you would need to go back and forth in the color of the light and the color of the material of the layout. So I'll increase the saturation of the background and make it more blue. And now before we start rendering this, so the first thing, I'll apply some camera effects. Let's select the camera, enable the render, and disable the depth of field which we had created earlier. Okay, and enable go to the render properties and enable the motion blur. Okay, now to view the motion blur, what we are going to do is, first let's just make the render size smaller from the render output properties and render image. Okay, now you'll see there is this motion blur, okay, in the entire image. Now I'll just cancel the render. We don't want a motion blur for everything. We want this for only for these wings, the propeller. So what we are going to do is we are going to select the cloud, or actually let's select everything with A in the viewport and go to object properties. Let's disable this one and right click on it and copy to selected. So none of these will have motion blur now. If you render this, render image, so it appears flat. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll select only these parts. Let's disable the cloud for now and overlays. Let's only select these parts which are rotating and enable the motion blur for these and copy to selected, right click. Okay, enable the clouds. We can delete the layout, delete hierarchy, we don't need it anymore. So now if you render this one, let's just render this image. Only the propeller will have the motion blur. You can adjust the speed of motion blur from here in the render properties. You can change the shutter speed and adjust the motion blur. Render image. Let's see what is happening. So yeah, the more this value, the more you'll get the motion blur, and that actually also depends on the motion the object have. If it's not moving too much, then doesn't matter how much parameter you change here, it won't affect. Okay, so one more thing we are going to do before we start preparing for the render. These clouds we have created, if I isolate this one cloud, you'll see if I change this value, the W over here in the Voronoi 4D texture, the shape of the cloud changes over time. So what we can do is actually animate this value. Go to the frame 1 and press I over here. Go to the frame 240 and maybe change this one slightly and press I again, so that your clouds are animating over time and it gives you illusion of motion. Okay. Okay. Alright, so now we are going to tweak few more things before we start rendering. If you go over here, uh, if your computer configurations actually are slowing the renders down, there are few things you can do to take this render, make this render faster. Okay, these bounces parameter actually, these are for number of bounces for each of these parameters, like how many times the light bounces to the diffuse surface, and how many times to the glossy, and to the volume and transmission. So you can decrease these values which are capped by this number, and see if it's affecting your render, how much it's affecting your render. So I'm going to put very drastic number over here. Let's make it 5 for now. Okay, and see how much it's affecting my render. Now if you see, if I make this one 1, you'll see some of these things start to look really flat. Okay, like because of 1 in transparency, what is happening, because we have 4 walls like outer and inner, this glass is starting to look black. So 1 will not work, so let's make it 2, 3. Now our glass we can see, but then because of a limited number of parameters over here, the light is not getting through the glass and falling on the character. So default value is 12, and you can either adjust these manually from here. Like for transmission, let's make it 8, and for transparency, let's make it 5. For volume, you can make it 0 if you like. And now this will make the clouds a little boring, but that will save you render time. Okay, and step size for volume, keep it 10. Now one more thing you would want to do is in output properties, in the view layer properties, enable the denoising. Now what this will do is, whenever your render is done, if there is any noise, it will remove the noise. Okay, now I think it's time we start preparing our render. Now so far what we have been doing is we have been rendering our output from here in the output, in the render properties. Okay, output properties. But if you want to render out some passes, you also want some of these properties like glossy, transmission, and so later you can composite them properly. So for that, what you would need to do is 2 things. One is enable these passes. So let's say if I want glossy direct and indirect, and I want one z depth, and we want one maybe shadows. Let's make it let's make ambient occlusion as well. So what will happen is, now if you press F12, let me just make the render 50%. Okay, and let's make the render sample to 128 and make it. Okay, so our render is done. For 50% render scale, it took me around 4 minutes for 1 frame. Okay, and this is not a very high quality render, but for tutorial purpose, I don't think you would be able to render the entire sequence in really high quality, because if I increase all these parameters to the production scale, one render could come out to like 40-50 minutes. So it's okay to render it in low resolution, just for learning purpose. And now if you go over here, once your render is done, right now it's showing combined. So this is a combined render. Okay, over here we had enabled few passes. Now if you click on any other parameter, now this will show you different different passes. So in the shadows, you can only see the shadows. In the gloss direction, you can see the glossy parameters which are being directly influenced. The indirect light which is affecting the glossy parameter, you can see that. and noisy image, and this is without the denoising, and combined will have a bit smoother result. Okay, so this is just for your knowledge. It's not that you need this at this moment, but this is how you render out the passes. Okay, so one more thing, now let's change this to compositor, and click on make sure use nodes is enabled. So this is what you'll see in the compositor when you open it. Okay, if you can't see it, simply press dot on number pad, and this will zoom into your compositor. Now you can delete this node and add one node called file output. Okay, and what this does is basically it will output your file. Now you can add this to image and D drive and make a folder called plane render. Okay, and I'll save this one as plane. Okay, and now over here you can add more output. If you click over here, select this one, go to the properties. Right now it's showing you image. You can double click on this called color. Okay, this will give you combined output. Now add one more input and call this maybe you want shadow, so let's call this one shadow. And you can add more inputs, and let's say you want glossy, and name it glossy. Okay, now you'll see if you enable or disable any parameters, those will add up over here. So this is just for your reference. I don't need these passes at this moment, but you would have to add input over here and connect it in the file output, and after that and also over here you can select which format you need. Okay, so I'll keep it PNG and make it 0% compression, and now let's render it. Now over here so far we have been rendering our image. Now to render the sequence you will have to click on the render animation. Okay, now let's first render one image and see what is happening. So I'll just make one very low resolution render, like maybe just 8% render image, and let's see what is happening. Okay, now I'll go to the D drive and let's click on the plane render. You'll see we have a folder called plane, and this have three passes: color 167 is the frame number, glossy 167 is the frame number, and shadows. Okay, so this is how you render the output. Okay, now for any kind of render it's always a good practice to render out a very low resolution output, and once you are satisfied with everything, then you can increase this to 100%. And also like if you can afford it, I would suggest you keep it to at least 256, and that will give you a really nice looking smooth result. But one frame will is for me, my computer configurations are pretty decent. I have let me show you just configuration, task manager, performance. So we have 20 cores, like multi-threading, 40 logical processors, and we have 64 GB memory, NVIDIA Quadro P4000. Okay, so this is a pretty outdated but good configuration for rendering. Okay, and if you can afford it, I would say keep it at least 256. And so let's go ahead and render this one, and we'll see our final output. Alright, so we have the entire sequence rendered, and for like I rendered this one in HD, and for one frame it took me around 15 minutes to 20 minutes, and this is still not a very high quality render, but you'll have to live with this. The process of rendering, like even though you can optimize the renders a lot, the process of rendering takes time, so you'll have to be patient with it. There is no shortcut for this, and whenever you are rendering for production, you should always consider using render farms, or at least keep one or two computers for a few computers for just the rendering purposes. Okay. And render optimization will always be helpful, but as long as it doesn't affect the quality way too much, and it doesn't really affect your visual, you should try to work on optimization. Maybe we'll discuss this in some other chapter. Okay, so this is the sequence. When you play it, it looks like this. Okay, so I adjusted the exposure a bit, then I selected the sky color and tweaked, made it a bit darker. I adjusted the colors and added some warmth in the clouds and some levels. Okay, now I made a duplicate, and I tweaked the cloud color a bit, added some gradient over here, and as you can see, I have this mask in the compositing. So after that, I added some glow and some motion blur in the post-production. Okay, so in After Effects, you can just add a pixel motion blur and increase the quality. And I added my logo. And for your final animation, this is what it should look like. So this is the final render, and it's not very high quality, but I think it solves the purpose. At this stage, it's a pretty good thing to look at. So after you're done with the modeling and you have your clouds and everything, I suggest you spend some time on the layout. And once everything is set up and you have tested your entire animation in a low resolution preview, then you should come back and adjust few parameters, like if you can make the clouds a bit more the arrangement a bit more random, and if you can tweak some frames. So after I rendered the entire sequence, I felt the clouds were repeating too much, so I had to delete few clouds and scale them up and down a bit. And also you can see over here the clouds are animating. Okay, this is a very like exaggerated animation, but it gives you a nice sense of motion. Okay, and yeah, so and in post-production I add some lens flare, and I hope you have some knowledge of post-production. If not, don't worry about it too much at this moment. You can you feel comfortable and use any software you like for the compositing. So yeah, this was a very long chapter, and like a lot of things we did today, and it could be it could take some time to catch up with this, but it's I think it will be a great practice if you can whatever you have modeled, you can make some nice animation out of it and render it. Okay, so like it's not just for this tutorial purpose, it's always a good practice. Whatever you start it, you finish it. Okay, and try to work towards a portfolio. Like it doesn't matter however basic it is, like whatever you're creating, you should always try to give it some nice render and place it, so that over the years you can see your progression, and over the years you have some portfolio. So your portfolio actually can begin on the very beginner level itself. Okay, if you are committed to whatever you're creating and don't treat it like just a tutorial, then I think you will have some exciting things in your portfolio. Okay, so I think this one is a pretty decent render, and I really like it. So thank you for sticking to this tutorial for so long, and it's been a really long tutorial, and because of so many things happening outside, this chapter was delayed a lot. So for that I apologize, and I really hope I can make up for it, and my next tutorials will be coming soon, and I'm really excited to get back to my other series, which is content creation. That is a really advanced one. So feel free to message me and share whatever thoughts you have in mind, whatever you're working on projects, and if you want any advice, or just frame your questions properly, and it should set an objective for what you need help for, and I should be able to and get back to you as soon as possible. Okay, so take your aircraft model, just scale it up right, make some layout with a very dummy geometry, add a nice cloud with a volume shader, and place your clouds in the arrangement you needed. It's a very basic animation. It will take some patience. Okay, and definitely I was not able to finish this one in just 1 hour or 2 hours. It took me some time. I think it took me around a day to finish it. So this is a recap version of what I in a short format. Okay, so for this tutorial I recreated this scene, but it took me 1 day, so it's okay if it takes you more than 1 day, but it's a really good thing to have. Okay, so I hope you like it, and I am really looking forward to seeing what you guys create out of this. So do share your version, tag me on Instagram at CrossMind, and I want to thank all of you, and yeah, good luck in this journey, and hope you have learned something from this. Do share it with your friends, your colleagues, and yeah, bye.